Okay, so we'll continue from the life of the Buddha, and we've been going through the Four Noble Truths, and taking a good amount of time to reflect on it, because it's such a central teaching of the Buddhas. And we're on the section on the truth of the cessation of suffering. And of course, all of the Noble Truths need to be carefully understood and reflected on. But I think the cessation is something that one, of course, is that the whole point of the teaching is for the ending of suffering, but also that there's a nuance there that is important to reflect on and to tease out, because the mind, say the habit of the mind is to assume some kind of annihilation or something. Okay, this next quote is from the Anguttara Nikaya. When lust, this is from the Threes, Sutta number 55. When lust, hate, and delusion are abandoned, a man does not choose for his own affliction, or for others' affliction, or for the affliction of both. In that way, there comes to be extinction here and now, or cessation here now, without delay, inviting inspection, onward leading, and experienceable by the wise. So that, it's a pretty simple statement, but it's kind of huge, in that when greed, hatred, delusion are abandoned, then it's quite natural, ordinary, for one to not say one's choices are not geared to creating suffering for oneself, suffering for others, or suffering for everybody. So that that's in terms of a truly harmless being and liberated being, but also in that. These are the characteristics of the Dhamma. Sense of santitiko, akaliko, ehipasiko, opanayiko, pachatang veditabo vinyuhi, which we chant sort of regularly, pretty much every day. And but that is being the nature of the Dhamma. But there comes to be this cessation here and now, without delay, inviting inspection, onward leading, experienceable by the wise. So it's a characteristic of the Dhamma, intrinsic to the Dhamma, as it's practiced, applied, realized. And this next sutta, also from the Anguttara Threes, sutta number 33. Actions done out of non-lust, non-hate, and non-delusion, done when lust, hate, and delusion have disappeared, are abandoned, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, done away with, and are no more subject to future arising. So that's it's just a fairly simple statement, and I'm not sure. I forgot to look up the actual sutta and see if there's anything more there, but it's just that this sense of actions done out of non-lust, non-hate, non-delusion. Those are done when one has abandoned greed, hatred, and delusion. It's a fairly obvious, simple statement, but one can't expect anything else in that sense of, oh, when will I be wise, compassionate, brimming with light and love for all beings, and how can I keep hanging on to my greed, hatred, and delusion, not give it up, not abandon it, not let go of my defilements? I mean, it just doesn't work. It's fairly straightforward. Next one is from the Iti Vuttaka. Formless states are more peaceful than states of form. Cessation is more peaceful than formless states. So that, and there's a footnote on that. It is necessary to avoid confusing the formless, arupa, which is a variety of being, as a level of bhava, being, becoming, with the unformed or unconditioned, asankata, which is what has no formation or condition, sankhara. The latter is a term for Nibbana, so that sense of cessation, Nirodha, is also a synonym for Nibbana, which is unconditioned. Formless is always conditioned. So even though it's extraordinarily peaceful, sublime, and certainly desirable, cessation is more peaceful than that. Okay, there's a next quote is from the Udana. Udana 8, and it's 1-3. And this is a synopsis, which I'll read the synopsis, and then I'll go back and read because it's 3 separate short suttas, but then I'll go back and read the whole thing, just because I felt it fleshed it out a little bit more. There is that external base where no earth is, or water, or fire, or air, or base consisting of infinity of space, or base consisting of infinity of consciousness, or base consisting of nothingness, or base consisting of neither perception nor non-perception, or this world, or the other world, or moon, or sun, and that I call neither a coming, nor a going, nor a staying, nor a dying, nor a reappearance. It has no basis, no evolution, no support. It is the end of suffering. The unaffected is hard to see. It is not easy. These are verses. The unaffected is hard to see. It is not easy to see truth. To know is to uncover craving. To see is to have done with owning. And there is an unborn, an unbrought to being, an unmade, and unformed. If there were not, there would be no escape made known here for one who is born, brought to being, made, formed. But since there is an unborn, an unbrought to being, an unmade, and unformed, an escape is therefore described for one who is born, brought to being, made, and formed. Of course, that's one of the chants that we do as well. And it's quite a very important teaching, and it And sometimes it's helpful to approach these suttas because they're fairly condensed in terms of packed with meaning, but not a whole lot of words, but a lot of meaning. And they are, and then also seeing different translations tends to be quite helpful. Okay, so this is Udana 8. This is number 1. And of course, this is the Ajahn Just translation. So these are all 1, 2, and 3 on Unbinding. I have heard that on one occasion, the Blessed One was staying near Savatthi at Jesus Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. And on that occasion, the Blessed One was instructing, urging, rousing, and encouraging the monks with Dhamma talk concerned with unbinding. The monks, receptive, attentive, focusing their entire awareness, lending ear, listened to the Dhamma. Then, on realizing the significance of that, the Blessed One on that occasion exclaimed. And of course that's what the Udana is, that these inspired utterances or exclamations. So the Blessed One on that occasion exclaimed, "There is that dimension, monks, where there is neither earth, nor water, nor fire, nor wind, neither dimension of the infinitude of space, nor dimension of the infinitude of consciousness, nor the dimension of nothingness, nor dimension of neither perception nor non-perception, neither this world, nor the next world, nor sun, nor moon. And there I say, there is neither coming, nor going, nor staying, neither passing away, nor arising, unestablished, unevolving, without support, a mental object. Just this, is the end of stress, end of suffering. Number 2, I have heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was staying near Savatthi at Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. And on that occasion the Blessed One was instructing, urging, rousing, and encouraging the monks with Dhamma talk concerned with unbinding, with Nibbana. The monks, receptive, attentive, focusing their entire awareness, lending ear, listen to the Dhamma. Then, on realizing the significance of that, the Blessed One on that occasion exclaimed, "It's hard to see the unaffected, for the truth is not easily seen. Craving is pierced in one who knows. For one who sees, there is nothing." To number 3. I have heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was staying near Savatthi at Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. And on that occasion the Blessed One was instructing, urging, rousing, and encouraging the monks with Dhamma talk concerned with Nibbana. The monks, receptive, attentive, focusing their entire awareness, lending ear, listened to the Dhamma. Then, on realizing the significance of that, the Blessed One on that occasion exclaimed, "There is, monks, an unborn, unbecome, unmade, unfabricated. If there were not that unborn, unbecome, unmade, unfabricated, there would not be the case that escape from the born, become, made, fabricated, would be discerned. But precisely because there is an unborn, unbecome, unmade, unfabricated, escape from the born, made, become, fabricated is discerned." And there is Ajahn Jeff puts a footnote onto this as well, in that, and he points to the verses from the Iti Vuttaka, verses 43. And Iti Vuttaka 43 gives this exclamation as the synopsis of a Dhamma talk, followed by this verse. The born become produced, made, fabricated, impermanent, fabricated of aging and death, a nest of illnesses, perishing, come into being through nourishment, and the guide that is craving is unfit for delight. The escape from that is calm, permanent, a sphere beyond conjecture, unborn, unproduced, the sorrowless, stainless state, the cessation of stressful qualities, stilling of fabrications, bliss. So before I go continue on, any questions, comments, conjectures?
One thing I've often been very inspired by that verse, the Sankata. One thing that I really appreciate about Ajahn translation there is that it's the verb of panya that's used, and like in many, not even say most translations, they don't use it because the common translation of panya as wisdom doesn't have a verb in English. But yeah, sort of being able to discern the deathless or sort of the body dhatu in one's immediate experience.
Yes.
It's been very inspiring to me.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because that's where these translations are so we understand things through language, and so that paying attention to how language affects us, and then does it affect the purpose of the teaching, and so that I think that was one, because Ajahn has come up with many really great translations, but to me that's one of the stellar sort of observations, and being able to recognize that how to translate using the verb form, which is what Vajjanati Panya is wisdom, is derivative from the verb Vajjanati, so that when you say wisdom, then it's a thing, but actually that active discernment and the discerning qualities are your engaging. That's really important in terms of, and that's all through practice. And it's just that I think of like my training and living in Thailand and hearing Ajahn Chah teaching and hearing the other forest masters teaching, the numbers of times that I've heard the words satipanya are just innumerable. And so satya, mindfulness and discernment, or awareness and discernment, sati and panya. This is so much of the exhortations for practice are around that cultivation of awareness, mindfulness, attention, and discerning, reflecting, seeing clearly.
I remember hearing, I think it's in the Udana, that the Buddha gave his teaching that cessation of suffering is like having in the seen there will be only the seen, in the heard only the heard. And I was reading it in a book that how that can be applied in like daily life, or where in interacting with people, that we observe their actions in terms of just what happened instead of projecting our evaluations or moods onto it.
Yeah, from
recognizing how, normally we are affected by our biases. I mean, that's what it's translated into English, and in the Pali it's agati or agati, agati, and it kind of literally means leaning. So that we lean with desire, we lean with aversion, we lean with, we lean over, we get out of balance with delusion, we lean with fear. And so those are the, how we tend to be reactive through our various perceptual biases. We bring our memory and we take our projections, and it's, we forget that we tend to be leaning and caught by our various biases. And just being able to simplify things. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I hadn't really thought about it. I tended to my own kind of bias was my own leaning was
more in terms of
that fourth jhana being, as it said, like purified mindfulness and equanimity as the kind of the stepping off point into complete release. That's my own conjecture. I don't know that there's all that special meaning to be placed on that. But yeah, because my mind just doesn't go to realms so much. I tend to go to the more the psychological or the quality of mind. Okay. The next one. There are two elements of Nibbana. What two? There is and this is from the Itivuttaka 44. There are two elements of Nibbana. What two? There is the element of Nibbana with result of past clinging still left, and the element of Nibbana without result of past clinging left. What is the element of Nibbana with result of past clinging still left? Here a bhikkhu is an arahant with taints exhausted, who has lived out the life, done what was to be done, laid down the burden, reached the highest goal, destroyed the fetters of being, and who is completely liberated through final knowledge. His 5 sense faculties remain, owing to the presence of which he still encounters the agreeable and disagreeable, still experiences the pleasant and painful. It is the exhaustion of lust, of hate, and of delusion. In him that is called the element of Nibbana with result of past clinging still left. And what is the element of Nibbana without result of past clinging left? Here a bhikkhu is an arahant who has lived out the life, done what was to be done, laid down the burden, reached the highest goal, destroyed the fetters of being, and who is completely liberated through final knowledge. All in him that is felt will, since he does not relish it, become cool here in this very life. This is called the element of Nibbana without result of past clinging left. And that is a statement or a sutta that has confounded Buddhist scholars, Buddhist speculators for over 2,500 years. So I doubt that we'll settle it today. But I think it's one of the things is that just that recognition that there one that's because there are interpretations that and of course that's definitely not what the say the practice traditions tend to adhere to, but that the one of these elements of Nibbana is requires you to die first. So, and that's something that these are very much, especially from the say practice traditions, that these are things which are experienceable and lived within. Okay, the next is from Samyutta 38, Sutta number 1. That which is the exhaustion of lust, of hate, and of delusion is called Nibbana. And of course, when you say exhaustion, then it's also, you say this Nirodha, cessation as well. So that's a very simple and clear description of Nibbana. Uncomplicated. The next is from the Sutta Nibbata. This is Sutta Nibbata 5, Sutta number 7. Just as a flame blown by the wind's force, upasiva, said the Blessed One, goes out and designation applies to it no more, so too the silent sage, being free, he's referring to himself, being freed from the name body, nama-rupa, goes out and designation applies to him no more. And they're talking about, does the Buddha exist after death? Does he not exist after death? And then upasiva then comes back with a question. Then when he is thus gone out, does he exist no more? Or is he made immortal for eternity? So may it please the sage to make this plain to me, because it is a state that he has understood. Then the Buddha's reply, there is no measuring of one who has gone out, upasiva, said the Blessed One, and nothing of him whereby one could say aught of him, or say nothing of him. For when all ideas have been abolished, all ways of saying too have been abolished. So that language can't describe what that experience is. So that the Buddha is again. This is like we talk of the Majjhima Patibhata, the middle way of practice, but then there's also Machena Dhammadesana, the middle way of teaching, and the Buddha is sort of threading that needle of what is. I mean, there is an ending of suffering, but it isn't a being or an extinction of being. It's not a this or that. So, I mean, it's similar to, say, like when Ajahn Chah, practice is about, neither going forward nor going back, nor staying still. So it's hard to describe, hard to talk about. But it's not that it's not there. It's not that it doesn't. Because how do you describe an unborn, unoriginated? That is. But it's because there is such there that it's possible to experience the fruits of the practice. Any questions on those readings?
Those are
the end of the what's in the book on cessation, but I thought to do a bit of supplemental readings that helped, hopefully, help to clarify or illuminate. And this is from the book Buddhadhamma, sort of a little handy pocket text of but it is this is a real, to me this is a real treasure. And so then there's an appendix on, and this is in on the section on dependent origination, but it is talking about Nirodha. So this is Appendix 6 of Nirodha. So page 299 in Buddhadhamma. But it certainly, it applies just as well with, say, Nirodha Satya in terms of the Third Noble Truth. The term cessation has become the standard translation for Nirodha. And of course this is written in Thai, and but the Thai language has the same problem as the English language. In that you say in Thai you say dap, but it's it's an inadequate, and cessation is a inadequate kind of translation for a Nirodha. So the term cessation has become the standard translation for Nirodha. When alternative translations for Nirodha are used, people may raise objections or they become confused, thinking that these alternatives are derived from other Pali words. In Buddhadhamma, I too have relied on the term cessation for for the sake of convenience and to avoid the misunderstanding that another Pali word is being referred to, and then in brackets, and also because I have not found a suitable, concise replacement. But there are many occasions where the term cessation itself may lead to misunderstanding and is technically the incorrect translation. The word cessation in English generally means the destruction or end of something that has already arisen. Nirodha, independent origination, and then in brackets, and in the Third Noble Truth, dukkha nirodha ariya satya, however, means that something does not arise because no causes exist for it to arise. For example, the phrase avidya nirodha sankhara nirodho is translated as because ignorance ceases, volitional formations cease. In fact, this phrase means that because ignorance does not exist or does not arise, or there are no problems associated with ignorance, volitional formations do not exist, do not arise, and there are no problems associated with volitional formations. It does not necessarily mean that existing ignorance must be terminated in order to terminate existing volitional formations. And of course that will go through the whole of the Paticca Samuppada, and by extrapolation all similarly that relationship to the Third Noble Truth. There are occasions when Nirodha is accurately translated as cessation. For instance, when referring to the nature of conditioned phenomena, and when acting as a synonym for bhanga, breaking up, anicca, impermanence, kaya, destruction, and vaya, decay. For example, bhikkhus, and this is a quote from it's from a Samyutta quote, bhikkhus, these three feelings are impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen, subject to destruction, subject to dissolution, subject to vanishing, subject to cessation. And then of course he puts the bracket in as well. Or every factor of dependent origination has these attributes mentioned in this quotation. Having arisen, conditioned phenomena automatically must decline, according to the nature of causes and conditions. One need not try to make them decline. They will decline of their own accord. The practical application of this teaching is to see that all that arises must cease. Although it describes a natural, objective process, the teaching of Nirodha in the Third Noble Truth emphasizes practical application. There are two interpretations of Nirodha in this context. The first derives from the prefix ni, in terms of non-existence without, and rodha, in terms of as, and he says, charaka as a prison, confinement, restriction, obstruction, impediment, translated as free from limitation, free from restriction, free from confinement, that is, free from samsara. The second interpretation equates Nirodha with anupada, non-arising. In this context, Nirodha does not mean cessation or dissolution in terms of bhanga, or the cessation of an arisen thing. It is a non-arising. So like non-arising of dukkha is a really different quality than having to go around stamping out all the dukkha, bringing it to kind of a finite sense, ending. Anyway, that's and then he also there's also a bit in in his chapter on the Four Noble Truths, on Nirodha, the cessation of suffering. Once the Buddha had described suffering and its causes, which are matters of adversity and dissatisfaction, he assuaged the minds of those disciples receptive to his teachings and gave them hope by teaching the third noble truth of cessation, revealing that the oppression by suffering can cease. The basic problems of life can be solved. A desirable way out exists because the cause of suffering can be eliminated and brought to an end. Suffering exists dependent on causes. When these causes are removed, the result of suffering likewise ceases. When suffering ceases, the state of no suffering, a freedom from suffering, arises automatically. Mental disturbance is transformed into a state of freedom, clarity, purity, and ease. For this reason, cessation is presented as the third noble truth, both because of the natural sequence of events and because of its aptness as a teaching method, which kindles interest, promotes understanding, and encourages practice leading to true realization. When one eliminates craving along with its companion defilements, which tyrannize and seduce the mind, one is no longer harassed by agitation, yearning, anxiety, fear, animosity, loneliness, and boredom. One does not need to rely on the temporary happiness of fleeing from these disturbing mind states, of trying to bury them or replace them with something else, or of venting one's frustration outwards. By attending to suffering at its causes, the mind is now liberated, independent, peaceful, and possessed of a pure happiness. It is not assaulted by lingering doubts and fears. The normal, constant state of the mind is one of joy, clarity, and ease. One has reached spiritual perfection and fulfilled the act of realization, satchikirya. Similarly, when the mind is liberated from mental defilements and entanglements, when it is free and bright, ignorance no longer has any manipulative power. As a consequence, wisdom is also purified and freed from the deceptive and corrupting influence of the defilements. One is able to reflect on things correctly and in harmony with the truth, and discern things according to cause and effect. When ignorance and craving are not present to cause misunderstanding, wisdom is the principal agent to guide behavior. One then acts, expresses oneself, and relates to the world with a thorough knowledge of the ways of nature. Apart from being the bedrock of internal purity and freedom, outwardly, wisdom helps for applying one's personal knowledge and capabilities to solve other people's problems and to generate true well-being. A person's intelligence is used to its fullest extent without impediment or distortion, and it is used only for wholesome purposes. This is to live one's life guided by wisdom. Moreover, when a person is free, steady, and naturally happy, not self-obsessed, not looking for things to consume, not trying to protect or reinforce the burden of self-importance, the mind becomes expansive, and the feeling of freedom pervades outwards. One becomes receptive to the happiness and suffering of fellow creatures, and one wishes to provide assistance. Wisdom is then provided with the power of compassion, which helps to guide one's behavior. One then lives fully for the well-being and happiness of others. When one is free from grasping and selfish attachment, one is able to perform virtuous and kindly deeds in a one-pointed, resolute, and devoted way. Inwardly, one is free, happy, and pure. Personal well-being has been brought to perfection. Outwardly, one acts to support other people. Together, they complete the attributes of one who has realized cessation. A person who walks the noble path does not need to wait to experience the blessings and benefits of realizing Nibbana. the heart of cessation. Even while walking correctly along the path, one is able to constantly witness the increasing fruits of practice, both in regard to personal benefits and in regard to those blessings one can bestow on others. That was a particularly beautiful kind of summary of the function of because cessation can sound like say as a goal can sound pretty dry or almost intellectual, not really or strained in some way, but that's the opposite is the case.